Love finances, the other F word, and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances, the Other F Word. And today on the episode, we are going to try to solve the age-old argument between Zoe and I. Who is better, Prince or Michael Jackson? And Michael Jackson will be covering a ton of their life's exploits. But first, Zoe needs to welcome a new country.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the FTOFW family, Malawi.
Malawi, welcome, welcome, welcome.
And another shout out, this time to one of our favorite listeners, Drop the Hammer. On our 27 Club episode, one of the artists I talked about was Maria Serrano. I hope I said that right. She was one of the singers who died in a plane crash in 2001. And she was from, I think she was a backing singer for Passion Fruit. And Drop the Hammer let us know that one of the other people that died in that plane crash was a singer from the group La Bouche. And Mel is going to tell you what song they're famous for.
Be my lover, won't you be my lover?
And please don't get us started, because last episode we attempted to record, she just sang that constantly, and it was in my head all day.
But then I got Zoe to sing it too, so it totally abolished me of.
We ended up just having a little Be My Lover party, and it was all worth it. But thank you, Drop the Hammer, for letting us know what we were missing in life, which is Be My Lover by La Bouche.
La Bouche, yes. And so Zoe is going out in surgery. Do you want to share the surgery you're having or no?
Yeah, I don't mind. It makes me sound like I'm an 80-year-old woman, but I'm having my knee replaced tomorrow, so I will be out this bitch for a little while.
So the music and movie news will be paused temporarily while we give Zoe time to recover and take her heavy narcotics. And also, before we get started, I just wanted to give a shout out to 1001 Songs That Make Me Want to Die. I was on their show and we discussed Band on the Run by Wings, which is a song that I hate with everything in my life. And so shout out to that podcast. Thank you for having me on as a guest. And with that, I think that's all the announcements we had.
Yep.
Okay. So now let's hear why Prince is great and wonderful, but inferior to Michael Jackson overall. So Zoe, take it away.
Well, Prince is the man. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that I have a huge painting of him behind me. So I adore him. I was fortunate enough to have seen both of them in concert. I saw Michael Jackson at Wembley Stadium with Kim Wilde supporting him. And if you listen to our episode with Rory Kaplan, which is episode 308, he was the keyboardist for that tour, and I was there waving to Rory. I'm pretty sure he waved back to me. Back in the, what must it have been, early 90s? Anyway, and he was fabulous. But I also got to see Prince at Wembley Arena during his Love Sexy tour and during his residency at the Rio, which is a much smaller venue.
I'm so jealous.
Oh, God.
So jealous of that. I actually am jealous that you saw both of them, but I'm really jealous of the residency at Prince.
Mm-hmm. At Rio. Yeah, it was, you could almost touch him. And believe you me, if I could have done, I would have done.
Oh, I would have. Yeah.
Totally. So, okay. I mean, I don't really feel like it needs to be explored too much, but I will explore it. Prince is the God man because, first of all, let's talk about best-selling song. Apparently in the UK, because I've gone UK and US, because why wouldn't I?
Right.
In the UK, in his 20-year career, he had 40 top 40 hits in the singles charts, but he only had one number one in the UK, which was The Most Beautiful Girl in the World.
Really?
Yes.
Oh
You
my
weren't going
God,
to
I
guess
forgot
that, were
about
you?
that. No, I was going to say Little Red Corvette
Nope.
or 1999. Wow, that's
Nope.
that is a great song.
I love that song. I really love that song. So that was his only number one, but he had 40 top charting hits in the UK. Now, funny that you just mentioned, what were the two other hits you just said?
Little Red Corvette in 1999.
So the number one best-selling single in the US was a double A side in double A side of 1999, A Little Red Corvette.
I didn't even know that. Oh, that would be so fucking cool to have. I have the single of Erotic City. It's like a 14-minute remix. It's fucking the bomb. It's like from Europe.
Okay, so forget that what I just said. Okay, his only number one in the UK was The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, but his number one best-selling record in the UK was what you just said, double A side of 1999, A Little Red Corvette. So you are on the money for UK. Now in the US, his best-selling hit was When Doves Cry.
Oh, I forgot. I keep forgetting. See, it's when you start talking about it, you're like, oh yeah, I fucking love that song too.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was coming out of the bathtub in the video, and I was like, fuck yeah.
And that was number one in 1984. And that's only the third. Well, that's the third best-selling single in the UK. So that's just some of his. I mean, and there's loads and loads of lists of his top 20 best records, and just to name some of them: When Doves Cry, Kiss, Let's Go Crazy. For some reason, Bat Dance was number 5 on some of these lists, and I'm like, oh God, no, that should be right. Shouldn't even be on there. No. You Got the Look, Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, even Diamonds and Pearls and all that kind of stuff, which wasn't my favorite, but that's on there. I Would Die for You, Alphabet Street. How about I Can Never Take the Place of Your Man? I love that.
I love that song too. It's so sad though. He's like, he left you with a baby and another one on the way. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this poor woman. Maybe she shouldn't be trying to get a one-night stand with anybody right now.
And how about I Want to Be Your Lover? I love that song.
I love that song. Sorry.
Lover. Another Lover Hole in Your Head. There's just so many. I love The Beautiful Ones too. That came on the radio the other day, and I love that.
Great.
So, I mean, there's just so many. He just has so many songs, and you just forget about some of them. But anyway, so yeah. But that was his best-selling song anyway, in UK and US. Now, best-selling album, according to CNN, his best-selling albums are Purple Rain, 1999, and Around the World. Oh no, hang on. There's 5 best-selling albums: Purple Rain, 1999, Around the World in a Day, Batman. What?
Oh, what? Who's listening to that fucking song?
I know. And Emancipation. Now, in the year after his death, and he died April 21st, 2016, his albums and singles sold a combined total of 7.7 million copies in the US. And the bulk were in the month after his death, 5.63 million. He sold more albums than any other artist in 2016. Purple Rain was the best-selling single, and he was the first artist to have 5 albums in the top 10 after his death, which were The Very Best of Prince, Purple Rain, the hits, the B-sides, Ultimate, and 1999. So, I mean, I think that happens quite a lot with musicians, doesn't it? After they die, their sales rocket. But I mean, that's just massive, you know. So I'm not sure that I agree with Batman being anywhere on the best-selling album. It
I
was
mean,
so awful.
and the video was so weird. He's like, he had his weird haircut at the time. He had dropped the purple rain curliness, and if I remember correctly, it was more straight, but it was still short. And he was like in this control room, and there's monitors, and then there's like the Joker laughing throughout the whole thing, and he's running back and forth, looking at screens, hitting buttons. And I remember watching it, going, "What the fuck am I looking at?" Do you remember the video?
No, I don't remember. You are much more into remembering the videos. I mean, I did have the album and I did play it, but I can't say.
Your
I mean,
fault.
that's just So it must have been me. But do you remember Vicky Vale?
Right.
Vicky Vale. I mean, it was just so just odd, and I just not.
Yeah. I think I'd seen an interview one time where he said that was his experimental phase. I'm like, well, it was,
Yeah,
because you did.
but yeah, I certainly wouldn't put that out of all of his albums. I
Mhm.
wouldn't put that in. But that's CNN. That's what they reckon. But okay, beg to differ on the Batman one anyway. Okay, then examples of business savvy, because what we're doing is we're going through similar categories for both to at the end come up with who we think is best. Prince. So example of business savvy. So many artists have cited Prince as being a huge influence, particularly following his dispute with Warner over the ownership of his music. And many will say that he used his fame to educate other artists about the business of the music industry, which is something that Mel talks about all the time, right? That's kind of your thing, right? And he had obviously very high profile battle for his creative freedom. And many say that through that, he taught younger artists about owning their own stuff, owning their own masters, controlling the use of their image. And as everyone knows, I think he famously changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol during the dispute with Warner. And lots of people mocked him, took the piss out of him. But the reason was legit. He wanted to legally record, own, and distribute his own music. And actually, he finally won his lawsuit against them in 2012, and he won the right to his masters. So, some might think he was a bit cuckoo, but he did it. He did it for a legitimate reason, and he won. He was also against streaming of music early on because of the tiny amounts that artists were being paid, and he fought hard to prevent unauthorized use of his image and the recordings of people recording his music at concerts. So he was totally against all these numbnuts that come in with their cell phones and
Fucking hate those people. You paid especially in Vegas, because tickets are not fucking cheap here with all these bitch ass venues, and you pay, and then you got some asshole in front of you who's taller, because I'm 5'3", taller than you, and you're trying to look at the fucking stage, and you're looking through their iPhone. I want to punch him in the back of the fucking neck. I hate that shit. I hate it so fucking much.
So he was, really against that, and he tried really. I think he was one of the early people to stop people from having cell phones and recording anyway, and whatever. And his independence from a record label paved the way for future artists. And also another example of his business savvy is the secret vault of his unreleased music, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Now, the next category that we're going to talk about is scandals. Now, I mean, first of all, just to say, when you type in to Google Prince and scandal, you get very, very different results. Prince Andrew, scandals.
Oh,
right now.
I was like, wait a minute, did Prince make a porn? Because I swear to God, I want
You'd
that
be all
link
over that
right now.
No, I was like, I just typed in Prince and scandal, and then all this Prince Andrew shit came up, and I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. But really, Prince wasn't really enmeshed in many scandals during his life, if any. And really, the biggest scandal was surrounded his death, I would say. I can't really remember any scandals that he was involved in during his life. I mean, it's not really a scandal, but there was obviously sadness surrounding the death of his, he had a child that died very, very young. But that's not scandal, that's just, sadness. But yeah, the biggest scandal with his death, as I think everyone knows now, he died from an accidental overdose of painkillers, which ended up being laced with fentanyl. and he was found dead in in an elevator at Paisley Park, and he was just 57 years old. And I think most people who have any liking for Prince can remember where they were when they heard that he had died. I was just I cried. I really did.
Yeah.
I was just so sad.
Yeah.
And apparently, and then, you know, bit by bit, everything starts to come out that he had apparently OD'd a week before when he was on an airplane, and he had to be given Narcan to revive him. And it started to come out that he'd been suffering from immense pain from all his years of dancing and wearing high heels and just being fucking Prince, and also from depression, which is really sad. And 6 days after that incident on the plane, he's dead.
Oh, he died. Oh no, you're talking about the OD was on the plane, but he didn't die on a plane.
No, he died
Okay.
in the elevator. But I'm saying after 6 days after that incident on the plane,
He died in an elevator?
yeah, they found him in an elevator.
Oh shit, I thought he died in bed or something.
No,
Oh, that's horrible.
they found his body, and I think he'd been in that elevator sometime before he was found.
Oh God.
So, I mean, it's just so fucking tragic, so absolutely tragic. And there was all kinds of, you know, issues around why he had street antidepressants, street painkillers, I think, and all that kind of issue. But, you know, ultimately, it's just so sad. And there's, you know, raises the question, and particularly here in Vegas, we have a huge issue with fentanyl laced drugs at the moment, and it's scary. People don't do it, you know, just don't do it. Don't take Xanax or any kind of prescription drug that you buy off the street, because you just don't know what is in it. And if it can happen to Prince, it can happen to you, you know. So it was that's really the biggest scandal. Other than after he died, it was then discovered that he didn't have a will, which again, this is something that Mel has talked about many times, right?
Yeah, we did a whole episode on it. And for listeners, if you want to go back, that was episode 14.
And so when you die without a will, you don't make it clear who you want your estate to go to. His estate went into probate, and he died 2016. So we're 5 years later, and his estate is still being contested.
Is it still being contested now?
Yep.
Oh, God.
His sister and 5 half siblings, it's just down to them now. Lots of alleged half siblings and alleged children came out of the woodwork. They've all been dismissed, but it's still going, being contested between his sister and 5 half siblings. In the meantime, his administrators have been able to do some good things. They've opened up his home as a museum and a memorial, and they discovered, as I mentioned earlier, the vault. Now, in that vault, there is just a plethora of material, songs, videos, movies. Apparently, there's enough material for him to put out a new album every year for the next 100 years.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I know. An estimated 8,000 songs, and 2 feature-length movies. And so far, the estate has already released 1 new album in July called Welcome to America. So yeah, that's the big issue though. 5 years on, they're still arguing over his estate. And actually, I'll get to that in a minute, but some of his, I'll get to what's happened with some of his estate, which is just sad. I'm sure he wouldn't want that to happen. I'm absolutely certain he wouldn't want, and that's, he wouldn't want people, he wouldn't have wanted all of that kerfuffle about his material. He would have wanted, we don't know what he would have wanted done with it, but I'm sure as shit he wouldn't have wanted people fighting over it. So next category is net worth. At his death, Prince's net worth was estimated to be between 150 and 300 million. And there was, like I mentioned before, a huge surge in demand for his work after his death, plus that locked vault of unreleased material just lifted that net worth, which that 8,000 songs, that's probably worth about 216 million on its own. The IRS estimated his estate in 2021 at 163.2 million. But what the IRS estimates, Mel will tell you, I don't know this, but what they estimate the estate at and its true value is different. And as we mentioned earlier, the artists' sales often spike by about 50% after their death, according to Forbes. And he was number 10 of the top selling dead celebrities as of 2020. So, but again, that's just an estimation. We don't know because his estate is still in probate. Now, the next category is assets. As I mentioned, his locked vault is just the major asset that's left, although there's also his home, which has been made into a museum, like I mentioned. The vault is just the biggest asset. His administrators have already sold a couple of his properties, including a mansion in Turks and Caicos, and that was to pay some of his tax bills. They've turned his home into a museum and memorial to provide revenue and pay taxes. And get this, Primary Wave apparently now own half of the estate because they bought an interest from 3 of his heirs. They bought his sister, Tyka Nelson, and 2 of his half siblings already sold their
the estate that they don't really have yet.
No, because they have
a claim, but they don't really know.
They don't know how much it is, but they already
sold it.
Yeah, they already sold their potential interest in it. So his full-blooded sister has, and 2 of his half siblings have. So there you go. Way to keep,
right. Way to keep his right. Exactly. His memory preserved. You fucking greedy.
Because I'm sure he would have been. That's really what he would have wanted after everything he did to keep himself independent. So yeah, they've already cashed out on him. So that made me a bit sick. Now, before I get to the final category of fuckability, like there's any contest there, and Mel knows she can't argue with this one. I did find this really great article in the I don't know how to say this. Des Moines, is that how you say it?
Des Moines.
Okay, Des Moines Register. It was an article by Kyle Munson, and it was called 10 Reasons Prince Tops King of Pop MJ. And I know, yeah, I bet you could do it anyway. And these, just to break it down really quick, he said, musicianship. Prince couldn't just sing, he could dance, he could fucking play the guitar, and he starred in movies too. Purple Rain was just the best ballad ever. His quest for independence, wanting to own his own masters, stuff we've talked about. Also, he was happy to write for others, not just himself. Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You, Bangles, stuff like that. Fashion and sex appeal, his legacy, all the music he's left behind. No sex scandals like MJ. He was really committed to his hometown. MJ built Neverland and surrounded himself with monkeys and fairgrounds, but Prince stayed true to his roots in Minneapolis with concert venue in First Avenue and his home studio Paisley Park, and he was better in concert. So hands up to Carl Munson, I agree. And finally, fuckability, Prince all day long. Hands down, Prince is the Lord.
So, a couple things. When Prince got independent, I don't think he really put out that much more music after that. Did he? I think he only released, if I remember correctly, the only things he released was on like his actual website, which sold, I mean, decently because he had a fan base, but it wasn't like he didn't top and MJ, same thing happened to him, didn't top the success he had before. As far as numbers, MJ just squashed Prince like right off the face of the earth, just right out the gate. So Prince died. And then within the month of April that he died, he sold 7 million copies of all of his stuff. MJ sold 7 million copies of just Thriller. That was his best-selling single.
Okay.
So when we're talking about the financial stuff, I mean, MJ, and you guys, for those of you who didn't come up during the 80s, first of all, and I love Prince and I love MJ and she loves MJ too. We love them both.
Oh, I do. I really do.
Yeah.
Who couldn't love Michael Jackson?
Absolutely.
All of his, we grew up on it.
Absolutely. So we love him. So for us, really, there's no picking, but since we have to pick sides of this argument. And when I came up with the idea, I was like, hey, why don't we do something like Prince versus MJ? She's like, I got Prince. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll get MJ, which is fine. Cause I mean, I know more about MJ than Prince, but I will agree that as far as, first of all, Prince could do the splits.
Ooh.
I ain't never seen MJ do one motherfucking split ever. Exactly. For those of you watching on YouTube, what Zoe just did with her mouth, it was obscene, and that is 100% correct. So Prince can do the splits, MJ couldn't do the splits. Prince could play guitar, and it was amazing. His halftime show where he played Purple Rain in Miami when it rained will bring you to fucking tears.
Mm-hmm.
And the famous quote from Prince is that, I don't know why I'm advocating for Zoe's side. The famous quote from Prince is when the organizer of the show or Super Bowl, whatever, called Prince and he said, hey, it looks like it's going to rain. Do you want to cancel the halftime show? And Prince said, can you make it rain more? And so which gives me goosebumps. That's how fucking amazing he was. So then he goes out and this huge sheet, you guys got to YouTube this fucking shit. This huge sheet comes up and you see his silhouette and he has his like hair kind of in a do-rag in the back. And he's playing Purple Rain. And every time I hear that song, I stop and I'm like in church. I'm just like swaying back and forth with my hands up, like, take me to church. Like, this is a fucking amazing song. I can hear the first guitar riffs in my head. Now, but let's, for the sake of the argument, let's start towing this line. Now, MJ, you guys, obviously being a financial person, I dug into it as much as possible, but he had a lot of shit that I did not realize. Like, everybody knows about the allegations against him and, that stuff. But I had no idea how bad MJ was fucking up. And he was fucking up.
What, financially, you mean?
Oh yeah, he was
Oh.
fucking up financially. So let's get into MJ. So of course, Michael Jackson died June 25th of 2009. That is my mother's birthday. I had to call her and tell her that MJ died. And I had to tell her that MJ died. We both cried on the phone. So for those of you who didn't come up when MJ, if you're a millennial, you remember MJ from the sex scandals, but you don't remember MJ as MJ, the powerhouse, where people would lose their shit to like Beatle level epic proportions, that when he would come on stage, he would just stand there. And again, Zoe can attest this better than me because I got to see neither one of them. And he'd just stand there and not even move. And people were like losing their shit. Then he'd like, after 5 minutes, raise his hand to even touch his glasses. People were losing shit. Like, you guys, right? Zoe was one of them. And so you guys, I mean, you have to, if you did not live through the 80s to know how much of the man that MJ was, it's something you can't relive. Maybe it was like people coming up during the Beatles era and how big they were. Like, I can go, yeah, the Beatles are big, but I'll never really get it. MJ was big on a scale that if you didn't live through the 80s, you can't fucking comprehend how big this motherfucker was. Besides the fact that he was one of the first Black artists to be played on heavy rotation on MTV and broke the way. And it was actually his record label, which I think was Giffen, but don't quote me on that, basically called them and said, oh, you will play this. And they did. And all of a sudden, because the people who ran MTV, we talked on our MTV episode, didn't want to play Black artists. They wanted to play predominantly new wave and British music, which they did. And Zoe covered it. They did a lot of that. So the fact that MJ stepped in and really forced their hand is pretty fucking amazing. So I put this together kind of in a timeline because there was so much information. And I could have kept researching it, you guys. I was just like, this is crazy. All the resources will be in the show note. So MJ died June 25th of 2009. I remember exactly where I was. I was pulling out of an investment meeting. I heard it on the radio. I stopped. I started crying. I called my mother and told her. She started crying. And I sat there crying before I could start driving again. Like, that's how much I loved MJ. So, MJ has released a whole ton of stuff. He did Off the Wall. He's with Jackson 5s. We're going to just focus on basically Thriller and Forward, even though Off the Wall is a fantastic, got me working day and night. Like, it's fantastic. Plus he still had the fro back then. So MJ releases Thriller. And basically Thriller, the single itself sells 7 million copies just by itself. November 30th of 1982, he releases Thriller, which I found conflicting information, who is said to, just this album alone, sell between 66 million to 100 million copies.
Oh my goodness.
So again, if you're talking about number wise, like we pulled ahead, but I mean, MJ is an outlier. We know that. And again, if you lived through the 80s, that none of this surprises you because you remember the fucking fandom that came up around him. It is quoted as still being ranked as the best-selling album of all time. I had to buy the fucking tape 2 to 3 times myself because it kept getting eaten and the fucking stereo. So I think that a lot of those sales were people putting tapes in machines that got fucking eaten after the fact, which is still on some bullshit. And so then in 1982, Thriller comes out. It's fucking massively huge. He didn't tour for that album. As Rory told us, his first tour was bad. And that's the one that Zoe got to see him on. And in 1985, MJ buys ATV. Now, in between 1982, he hooked up with Paul McCartney and they released The Girl Is Mine and Say, and they were, cronies and buds. And I always was like, hey, I love MJ, but he fucked Paul. Like, that's what has always been my line. And this is why I love researching this stuff, because now I don't think that way at all. So Paul kept telling him, dude, you got to get into publishing, owning the music rights. We've talked about this to death on this show. And so then MJ kept telling him, I'm going to buy your music. And I have YouTube videos in these links and Paul's like, oh, and then MJ's like, no, I'm going to buy your music. And then, Paul keeps laughing and he's like, MJ keeps telling him. And then Paul's a little uncomfortable by it, but MJ's flat out telling him, look, I'm going to buy the Beatles catalog. This is happening. So Paul has been telling MJ, hey, you need to go ahead and you need to start buying music rights. MJ says, I'm going to buy your rights. And then what happens is that in 1985, before MJ buys ATV publishing from another billionaire, the Beatles catalog comes up for sale to the tune of $30 million. Paul passed on it. He passed on it. I was always under the impression that he just took, like MJ just bought them under Paul. No, they were offered to Paul. The price was $30 million. Paul said, no, that's too much money. And so MJ turned around and he bought the entire Beatles catalog and the entire John Lennon catalog, or not the entire John Lennon catalog, but songs that were produced by John Lennon and some other things. So the tune of about 4,000 publishing rights that he purchased, and he bought it for $47.5 million. And we're going to talk about business savvy and what you'll see with Michael. His career reminds me of kind of like a stripper's career. Like you make the most money, or like a ball player, you make the most money you'll ever make in your life between your 20s and 30s. And then after that, it just starts going downhill. Well, this is what happened with Michael. He peaked. We have allegations everybody knows about. We're going to touch on here in a second. So he buys the Beatles catalog. He didn't buy it under Paul. Paul had the opportunity to buy it. Paul said it was too much money. So Michael said, fuck you, I'm buying it. So now Paul goes on, and there's links in the show notes. Paul goes on all of these nighttime talk show hosts and talks about how him and Michael Jackson are no longer friends because he bought the Beatles catalog. Fuck you, Paul. I'm saying it right now. And in August 31st of 1987, he released Bad, which the video was, I love Michael Jackson, but the video is comical. But there's so many great songs off that album. Dirty Diana, Man in the Mirror.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, so many, of course, Bad, who's bad. And he's like wearing a lot of zippers and chains, which is not a normal attire for somebody walking through a subway. Wesley Snipes was in the video, for those of you who might remember it at the beginning. And Bad sells 35 million copies. So on the lower end of Thriller, we'll say by half of that, if Thriller only sold 66 million, Bad by itself sells 35 million copies. And in 1988, MJ buys Never Never Land. And so Neverland Ranch. And so we have Paisley Park with Prince, and we have his little idiosyncrasies. And now, we also see that a lot of them are coming parallel to each other. And so he buys Neverland Ranch. Neverland Ranch, he buys it in 1988 for $14.6 million. It was 2,500 acres of property in Santa Barbara, somewhere in the wine country. This ranch, this is going to come up and be very important later. The ranch cost him about $10 million per year to maintain and had a staff of 160 staff employees. He had a full amusement park, which you saw a lot of times where he would have like, Make-A-Wish Foundation come in, which didn't help his allegations later. Even though if you think of how many kids actually ran through Neverland Ranch compared to how many people accused him of stuff. And I've said on the show before, and I'm going to say it again, I don't think he did it. Send your hate mail to my PO box. I don't think he did it. So anyway, and so it has a full amusement park and a zoo, $10 million a year. And it had 2 train stations, including a 50-seat movie theater. And of course, it housed exotic animals and Bubbles, which I think he took to the Oscars. Didn't he take Bubbles to the Oscars?
Did take Bubbles,
yeah.
yes.
And that's really sad state of that there's not any women that you would want to take to the Oscars that you took a fucking Bubbles. And I think it was the VMAs, Michael Jackson and Madonna, fuck Madonna. I think they went to the VMAs together. And it was, if I remember correctly, it was Madonna's idea because she just wanted to make a stir. And of course it did, because when I saw them together, I lost my shit, but then it was never, anything. November 26th of 1991, Dangerous is released. I fucking love that CD. I still have the last 3 CDs we talked about. I have them, and it sold 32 million copies. So this man, 32 million, 33 million, 66 million on the low end. Like, this man is fucking killing it. Like, everything he releases, there's artists now to sell 5 million would shit their pants right now. And this motherfucker in 1991 puts out Dangerous and sells 32 million copies. And that of course had the song that was Leave Me Alone, where it was talking about the tabloids and everything like that. Zoe and I went and saw MJ1 together.
Oh, fabulous. Loved it.
I've seen it 3 times. I love it. It's amazing. And they have a lot of the tabloid stuff as part of it. Now, this is where shit starts going south. In 1993, the first allegation of child molestation hits. And I'm not going to harp on this because that's not what this show is about, but you got to talk about it. Unfortunately, this is going to be something that did dog him, and you'll see financially dogged him for the rest of his life. So in 1993, he was accused of molesting a 13-year-old boy. I do want to mention that Macaulay Culkin said that he never did anything to him. The Emmanuel Lewis guy said he never did anything to him. There was a lot of people that said that he had never done anything to him, but this 13-year-old boy accused him of molestation, and Jackson paid them out of court $22 million. Okay, which seems like a ton of money, but you have to remember how much money this guy had. Oh, and before that, Dangerous is released. In 1991, the same year, he signed a $65 million recording deal with Sony. Okay, so he's still riding high. Dangerous has come out. It's selling like fucking crazy. He just just signed a $65 million recording deal. First allegation of child abuse hits. And then what we see is we start to see that Michael Jackson has a revolving door of advisors that come in and out of his life. And in 1994, we see that all of a sudden he's starting to overspend himself, and he had music royalties come in. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, from all of these music he owned, but he was still spending more money than he had actually coming in. And there is talk that after he died, even though he was worth money, he owed $400 to $500 million in debt, because he starts leveraging, and we'll see this. And this happens to a lot of people. And in 1995, June 20th of 1995, MJ releases his double CD History. And if you remember the commercial for it, it was very Stalinish. He was, there was a very big gold statue. Do you remember that, Zoe?
No.
It was a huge gold statue of him. And there was helicopters flying around. And I don't know why I remember all this stuff, but there's helicopters flying around, and there was a sheet over his statue. He had already been accused one time of child molestation, and everybody's making a big deal. Then the sheet falls off, and then there's this huge statue of Michael Jackson, which is on the cover of, which I have, History. And that one sold 11 million copies. So he gets hit with this first thing of child abuse. He still owns all of his publishing rights. History, 11 million copies, which is still great, but nothing compared to what he used to do. And there was a lot of people saying that Michael Jackson thought that he was, all that and the shit because of the simple fact that he had made this Stalinish kind of commercial to promote the release of it, or somebody did. Maybe it wasn't even Michael. Maybe it was, Sony, who knows? So he releases History. It sells 11 million copies. And then we see in 1995, his financial troubles are starting to brew, and he sells 50% of his music rights to Sony Music Group. And so there's this misconception that Michael Jackson owned Sony. He didn't own Sony. But what happened is because Sony purchased 50% of his music catalog, they launched Sony Music Group, who we talked about on the hypnosis episode, who is still currently out buying music right now. So all this stuff is interconnected, you guys. And so later what we see is that Sony Music Group now goes on in 2012 and purchases EMI. We've talked about them on the hypnosis show as well. And in 1995, MJ sells 50% of his music catalog for $95 million. So Paul doesn't want to buy his rights because they're too much. And Michael Jackson sells 50% of it for $95 million. So fuck Paul, you missed the boat. But Paul ended up getting his masters back. So good on Paul, because I want people to have their masters. But Prince had to fight to get his masters. Michael always owned his masters because Michael is the king and Prince is only a prince. So in 2001, he takes out a loan. So he has 50% of his original music catalog left from ATV. And so he secures that with a $200 million loan from Bank of America. And in 2006, we see that he's forced to refinance that loan because he's about to go into bankruptcy. So now he has 50, like when we talked about in episode 20 about the Bowie bonds episode, we talked about how the bonds are secured against David Bowie's music rights. Well, here, Michael Jackson secured this $200 million loan from Bank of America with 50% of his music rights that he had left, the only ones he had left. And in 2002, financial problems continued, and he kept spending, large sums of money. And then we see another lawsuit come through by Union Finance and Investment Corp that wanted $12 million in unpaid fees and expenses. So I had no idea the amount of lawsuits because everybody's like, well, oh, Michael must have spent it all. Well, yeah, he did spend it all. But at the same time, it wasn't just the child molestation that everybody's like, that's what made him broke. Oh, no, you guys, it was all kinds of other shit. There's so many other lawsuits in here we're going to talk about. And in 2003, so first allegation, 1993 of child molestation, puts him in a tailspin. 2003, second one comes through. This is the trial, for those of you who remember, where we famously see Michael Jackson on MTV talking into the camera with the yellow background, looking very disheveled. His voice was quaking. He was very upset. And he said that, he was accused. He did not do this. I think that's when he closed Never Never Land. At that, officially closed it at that point to anybody new coming in. And I remember him being very graphic, talking about how they took pictures of his genitals. And, it was just really fucking crazy. So in 2003, second child, 13-year-old boy comes through, accuses him of molestation, which ultimately takes him to the trial, which ends in his acquittal in 2005. There was a lady, I think he was accused of, I don't know, I want to say 10 to 12 accusations. What is it called, Zoe? Like when somebody's accused of something?
Charges,
thank you. And there was a white lady famously sitting out there with a stack of doves. And every time they announced on the loudspeaker, because of course the streets are flooded, that he was acquitted on a charge, she would release a dove in the air like, you stupid bitch. So she released all of her doves because he was acquitted, I believe, on all charges. And a lot of this information obviously is very old because MJ died first. So a lot of stuff has came to light. So I'm trying to wade through this as best I can. And so that's it. So then that's the child molestation charges. Now, Jackson is going crazy and is spending all kinds of money. So just to give you guys some lavish stuff that he spent money on, he purchased the Academy Award that was won by Gone with the Wind for $1.5 million.
Why?
And then exactly. And then he had it rotating on a pedestal in his lounge, which is just fucking stupid. Okay. He was claimed that he would go on in like stores and drop $1 to $5 million just on shopping sprees, which seems crazy to me. And so what we see is we start seeing the advisors pop up going that he had a massive disconnect between how much money he used to earn and how much money he earned. Now we stopped. The last CD he had released was Invincible in 2001. And that really doesn't go very far. I think he did Justin Timberlake, the duet, which came to my mind right now, and now it's gone, but he did a duet with Justin Timberlake trying to revitalize his career. And between there, we had Blood on the Dance Floor, which did horribly. And the song title track from that album is also awful. And we start seeing a whole bunch of memorabilia auctions come up that keep getting canceled because of all the legal wrangling and everything that's going on. And so then in 2009, we start seeing shit is just, we go into free fall. Of course, this is the year of his death. Michael Jackson has lost Neverland Ranch. Well, there's a partnership that starts forming, and what we start seeing is that Michael goes downhill. So in March of 2009, Neverland goes into foreclosure. It was supposed to go into foreclosure in May of 2008, but they put a hiatus on it. And he was failing to make his mortgage payment. So in March of 2009, it officially goes into bankruptcy, and billionaire Thomas Barak, chairman and CEO of a Los Angeles-based real estate company, Colony Capital LLC, went and bought Neverland Ranch and did a partnership with Michael. So we start seeing all these people between his release of 2001. We start seeing all these people reaching out hands because everybody loved Michael, trying to get him back on his feet, and it went awry. So we see the This Is It tour that was supposed to be announced. It was vying to come to Vegas. I was super excited, but then it ended up going to the UK, and he was currently in rehearsals for that when he actually passed away. And so this fucked A&G when he died, because they had already sold more than $85 million worth of tickets and had already spent $30 million on the production when Michael died. And the insurance company only covered the first 10 days of the tour because they were concerned that Michael Jackson would not be in shape to perform, which ultimately found out to be exactly correct, right? And
Yep.
so they announced the This Is It tour of 50 shows, and it was supposed to start July 8th in London's O2 Arena, and it kept getting pushed back and pushed back. Michael was such at the height at times that he was named the highest paid entertainer twice on the Forbes list. And then what we start seeing is more lawsuits come in. And so there was a proposed Jackson 5 reunion concert that ended up putting a lawsuit against him in May of 2009 with a $40 million claim against him. We talked about the Union Finance and Investment Corporation for $12 million. We also see All Good Entertainment claimed a breach of contract and fraud against Michael and wanted $20 million in compensatory damages and $20 million in punitive damages, claiming that he promised that he would never perform solo in front of their tour, but he did. And so they were suing him for damages. And then he had one of the people that came to his aid was Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa. And he was the second son of the king of Bahrain. And he took Michael under his wing. He took him over to his country. He gave him a place to stay. He gave him millions of dollars. And he was saying that Michael was supposed to cut an album. Michael was supposed to write an autobiography. And the guy was flipping the bill for all of this. And basically, Michael delivered on none of it. The album never came out. The autobiography never came out. Nothing ever happened. And so Al Khalifa, he sues him now, and he sues him for all the money that he paid him. He sues him for breach of contract, for not doing any of the things he promised. And he had even on top of that paid him an additional $300,000 just for being a motivational guru. And all the money that he dumped into Michael never produced. So for whatever reason. So we're 8 years past his last studio release. He's immensely in debt. And then, of course, June 25th of 2009, Michael ODs, whether it was his fault or Conrad Murray, who was the doctor, he ODs and dies in his sleep from sleeping pills. And then that leads us to us. So to Zoe's point, the IRS valued his estate at $1.3 billion when he died, which again crushes Prince's number, and said that his likeness, just Michael Jackson's likeness, was worth $434 million. And of course, the estate attorneys start fighting the IRS, saying you're just trying to run up the value of his estate to get more estate tax out of him. And we've talked about estate tax on this show before. And so it was estimated that Michael Jackson was worth $236 million when he died. And he was worth $400 million. He was $400 to $500 million in debt. But with the evaluation and all of his music, after that, they're saying that it was higher than that. And then in 2010, June of 2010, we see MJ's wrongful death suit come through against AEG and against Conrad Murray, who was the doctor who was prescribing him the sleeping medication. And Joe Jackson, of course, MJ's father, tries to say that the reason why this happened is because Conrad Murray was hired by AEG to give him whatever he wanted to. So he sued everybody. And then basically the suit, Joe Jackson walked away from the suit eventually. And the suit for $1.5 million that they were trying to, Joe Jackson just dismisses it with prejudice or without prejudice. I'm sorry. And walks away. And then that's done. And then in 2013, we have another lawsuit that comes through. We have a forensic accountant testified, and Los Angeles Times covered this, where basically that he was spending $20 to $30 million per year over what he actually earned. So for all of you making $50,000, $75,000 who think you don't need a budget, this motherfucker needed a budget, but you don't need a budget. Come on, guys. Like, get a budget is what I'm saying. And so because of this $20 to $30 million of overspending each year, that's what drove him into the debt that he was in when he passed. And in 2016, his estate sold the rest of all of the music rights that he owned for $750 million. Now, I don't know, how much of who of that was left, but I'm going to run down this list and we're going to wrap this out here real quick. Michael always owned his own shit. He retained his masters to all of his recordings. As to date, he still remains on Forbes' list of dead celebrities for the 9th year in a row, the top earning dead celebrity for $48 million a year. So this is going to blow you guys' mind. I'm going to read through a list real quick of all of the music rights at one time that MJ owned. Okay. Weird Al Yankovic, Fat and Eat It, all those. NSYNC, Tupac, Aerosmith, Alien Ant Farm, Angie Stone, Aretha Franklin, Backstreet Boys, Beach Boys, Beastie Boys, Black Eyed Peas, Blackstreet, Breakfast Club soundtrack, which for my 80s babies, that was huge. Bruce Hornsby, Chris Cornell, he covered Billie Jean, did a great job on it. Chris Isaac, Sierra, Coolio, De La Soul, Diana Ross, like a fuck ton of her stuff. Like he owned a ton of it. Now, and these are only the names that I thought people would know. Okay. E40, Elvis Presley, Eric Clapton, Fall Out Boy, Fat Boy Slim, Fleetwood Mac, Harry Connick Jr., Heavy D and the Boys, Ike and Tina Turner, The Jacksons, Jane Fonda, which a little weird, Janet Jackson, Jeff Beck, Kanye West, including Gold Digger, Kendrick Lamar, Madonna, fuck Madonna, Manhattan Transfer, Mariah Carey, MC Hammer, MC Light, Me Fi Me, Michael Bublé, Michael Jackson, everything, PM Dawn, Paul McCartney, plus the Paul McCartney and MJ recordings. He owned those two. Fish, Ray Charles, Quincy Jones, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Rihanna, Rod Stewart, The Roots, Santana, Seal, Sheila E., Simple Minds, Simply Red, The Simpsons released an album in the 80s, and I think it's called Simpsons Sings the Blues. He owned that, the rights to that. Sly and the Family Stone, Sounds of Blackness, Warren G., The Wiggles.
Yay!
The Wiggles.
I love the Wiggles. I love that he owned that, although that's weird.
The Wiggles, and he retained the entire rights to We Are the World, USA for Africa. Now, I'm going to end this for two reasons why MJ is better than Prince. Number one, MJ was doing a show with James Brown, and he told James Brown to bring Prince up on the stage. Prince, they gave Prince a guitar, which he started playing very well. The problem was the guitar was malfunctioning. It was broken. Then Prince tried to start dancing around and performing. The link is in the resources, and it's very awkward and uncomfortable. Like Prince was still trying to figure out who he was. MJ brought him on stage. Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is that during the recording of We Are the World, there's also another resource in there. Lionel Richie said that they reached out to Prince and they wanted Prince to come and be part of We Are the World. And Prince said, I don't want to be around anybody, so I'll just sing my vocals in another room. And Lionel Richie's like, no, man. He's like, we got Bob Dylan next to fucking XYZ. No, that's just not going to happen. And so Prince was like, okay, well then I'll just do a guitar solo and you put me in a separate room. And Lionel Richie is like, I don't think you understand what the fuck is happening right now. This is for charity. No, we're not doing that. So that is the reason why Prince is not on We Are the World. And if you watch a video that will have in the resource links, they are all on stage singing We Are the World. And somebody puts a mic up to Prince's face and Prince is sucking on a lollipop. And he looks disgustingly at the person who puts a microphone in his face and then offers his lollipop instead. So I'm like, okay, you were just being a bitch. All right. So the point is, fuckability, Prince hands down. I mean, there's just no contest. Okay. So fuckability for sure. Financially, Michael Jackson wiped him off the mat, but this is a cautionary tale. We always talk about MC Hammer. Oh, y'all need to fucking know about Michael Jackson. And that's all I got. Zoe?
Well, like you said at the start, we're both huge fans of both of them. This was just a bit of fun, but Prince rules.
MJ. So anyway, all of the resources link will be in our description. We want to thank you for listening. Please make sure to follow us on social media at Finance is the Other F Word and follow Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram. My book, Finance is the Other F Word, Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, you know, all that stuff. We appreciate you guys for listening. Please rate and review the show and make sure you check us on Kill Pop, because they are amazing and they're a fucking kick-ass radio station. And with that, I think we're out this bitch. Oh, MJ forever. Boom. Wait, hee. There you go. All right, I'm stopping. Hee.
Thank you for listening. Please check back for upcoming episodes and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Finances, the Other F Word.